Hi everyone. My name is Mafalda Duarte, and I'm super glad to be here and to be a part of this wonderful event. So feel free to put all your questions in the chat, and for sure we'll have time to talk about it in the end. So today I'm bringing you a talk about crafting your own path into game development. The reason why I picked a topic like this it was because um, if I didn't came from a typical background, and if you are around the industry enough, you will start to figure it out that a not typical background is the typical background in game development. So the talk today is going to approach a little bit of like who I am first, so you guys know me, the journey into even wanting to make games, the studios that I've worked at, and community work that impacted me. So who the hell am I? Hopefully for the ones of you that don't know me yet. I'm a developer from Lisbon, Portugal. Right now, I am based in Berlin, Germany. I am a producer and a studio director, but my background was actually studying fine arts and art multimedia, wanting to become a 2D animator. You might have wondering, so back then, did I grow up in games, wanting to make games? Well, actually, I knew that I wanted to be an artist. I knew that I wanted to be creative. And I always liked to produce projects and people. But I never thought myself as this role and with this path in my mind. And right early in the beginning, when I started in the fine arts college, I thought that because all of my life I always wanted to be an illustrator and an artist of some sorts. I thought that letting that go could eventually be a failure. And then maybe all of the time that I spent working towards that path wasn't as important anymore. And hopefully you learned the lessons that I've learned along the way. Um, because when I started and I applied to everything that I could, it was very difficult in Portugal to get in the door. I think it's an experience you all can relate to. And I finally got an interview, and it was with La La Land. And La La Land was this interactive children book publisher, and I was doing a lot of children book illustrations. I was like, okay, this is my moment. I'm going to be an artist. And I applied. And actually, they didn't want an artist. They were looking for a visual programmer. They had this tech that allowed you to program through Photoshop, and that's all they wanted. They just wanted someone that could come in and give life to those interaction books. And so I became an interactive designer. I said, okay, this was like an internship that would turn into a job. I said yes, and so I worked into four different books. The first two of Augie, the Little Witch, were illustrated by someone else that I already had on board for another illustrator. And all I did was programming, interaction design, and a lot of the same things that then I end up using in game development. But at this moment, I didn't thought about myself as a game developer, even though today I do. Um, I just thought, okay, I'm just trying to find a way to still be an artist and still be this illustrator. So I end up illustrating the following two books, the Halloween book and the Dream Keeper. And the first lesson that I learned is that your path, uh, your well, sorry, there's a typo, but your career path is not linear. So what you're doing right now is not the only thing you can do in the future. And it was a hard lesson to go through, and I think I only accepted it because there was something of this artistry still there, even though I was now more of this programmer slash interactive designer. So after this experience, when unfortunately the company closed after a year and a half, and I still have that in me. During that time, I had gone to game dev camp in 2014. I joined this indie team in Black Alga, which is like some friends that got together with someone that I knew from fine arts. They're like, okay, Mafalda, we want to become game designers and game programmers. Like, can you join us as a producer? And at this moment in time, I had zero production knowledge or skills. I learned everything that I know that I knew from books and the web. Um, but I said yes to the experience, and I started to connect with the game dev scene in Lisbon. Around the same time, I also found Trojan Horse's Unicorn as this art-based, focused event in Troia in Portugal. And in that event, it was my first like big international event. It had people from Disney and Pixar and Digital Domain and all of these big companies from outside of my little bubble. And because of that experience, I started to feel more and more comfortable with these international settings, with different thought processes, different people, and accepting that okay, I could like art and game development could merge, and I could see an opportunity here. And so I followed games, and in this moment in time, I followed games in the ways that I knew how and that I had the opportunity to do. So I entered the master's in game design and development at UB University. It's in a small city in the interior of Portugal. Um, but I wanted something more. I wanted the opportunity to experiment and to do something outside of my schoolwork. And so I started organizing events. I started organizing global game jams, and that connect me to a global game development audience, friends, connections, and also locally to do more like local game jams and like talks events and things like that. So I could learn from the people that were already doing it. And in that process, Ludoteca, which was this community group where Isaac Sanchez, that now is working in Ubisoft, and João Antunes were there, and then boarded me together with them. And these are people that they're now speakers with me at events. But we started all together at this moment, building community and building our own space in the industry. And I think that's at this moment in time is when we figured out, okay, we're students, so we might not have open doors, but we have time, and we can put ourselves into situations where we will find our people. And so around that time, I started being everywhere that I could. If you don't have a lot of money, or if you are in a country that doesn't have a lot of opportunities and bigger events, what I try to do is use all of the little ones. So everything that universities organize, that schools organize, um, from game jams to just like talks to lectures to small one day events, and I try to be a part of them all. And so in April 2019, I joined Games for Good. I went by myself. It was the first time that I went by myself to an event like that, and I just offered for to a team. And everyone in our team that you can see here in the photo, we all met right there, and we won second place. And that suddenly gave me visibility. So the lesson that I learned here is, yeah, it pays off to be involved. Be involved in industry and community events, do all of the extracurricular activities you can, and that networking opens doors. I understand that, again, not everyone is the same personality type, not everyone would have access to the same things. Uh, but the experience that I'm trying to communicate here, it was in this small country that didn't have a lot of things happening a couple of years ago. Yes, it is more booming right now with all the digital nomads, but there's always room to find your people, to find the people around you, either online or locally, that want to do the same things as you, and that is never a wasted time. And so from that experience, Nerd Monkeys came along. Um, for those of you that doesn't know Nerd Monkeys, they are a Portuguese indie studio that it was most well known by their work with Detective Case and Clownbot in Murder in Hotel Lisbon, and the following up sequel, Detective Case and Clownbot in The Express Killer. Those are two point and click detective adventure games, and they kind of made a splash in the industry. Everyone knew of them. They were also very involved in community events and activities, and so I was curious, but I didn't said yes right away. I was focused in my studies. I was living 3 hours away from Lisbon. I didn't know if I could join the company, and what I was offered wasn't, at first it wasn't right away a job. It was this mentorship opportunity. Uh, but through connection that ended up being outside of Portugal, we all just hanged in at DevCon 2019, and and those people that I saw, that I connected here, you could see Diogo in most of the photos, like on the right. He was the director of Nerd Monkeys, and he saw something in me at that moment, in the way that I networked with people, the way that I talked about games and the industry. And he was like, Mafalda, maybe you're not an artist. Maybe maybe you are a producer. We need to unlock that and figure out what that could be. Uh, and so I went back. I thought about it again, and I said yes to this experience. And the lesson that I would like to leave here is that, even though the opportunity that you have in front of you is not necessarily your dream job, your dream company, your dream project, or what your thought about yourself as, um, it little windows are always good things to grab to eventually open bigger doors. And for me, that was true. And when I joined, I spent 5 months hanging around as assistant producer, as figuring out everything that I could about the industry, about the people around me, um, and going to international events. So it was the first time that I went to something like Pocket Gamer London, for example, with a booth, with a developer booth showing a game, and that game was out of line. Um, at that moment I didn't know what I was doing with it. I was just like trying to learn everything that I could, seeing the reaction of people around me, seeing the way that they talked about it, and just like seeing the team work. I was assisting. Filipino was the main producer of the project, and I was just like watching the team, watching everyone working and understanding the steps, until eventually he left the company because he went to another place, to Lockwood, and Diog told me, "Okay, Mafalda, here's a new challenge. You have this game to produce." Um, and and I say, "Well, taking games into the next level is not something easy, but let's do it." This is a photo from one of our sessions, um, when we started working on the game, and Out of Line came together and was released in 2021. Was my first commercial release project, with a lot of ups and downs and difficulties, and difficult milestones to manage, and team trust to be earned, and a lot of imposter syndrome that you have along the way. But in this project, what I learned is to lean on your team, And that being a producer doesn't mean that you need to know everything. You are the facilitator for others' work. You are there to support them. And for me, that was a big growing moment to understand my role and um, completely transition into from what I thought about myself to what I actually like to do and enjoy doing, and the way that I like to interact with teams and projects. And so Out of Line became my first produced project and real step in that production direction. So thinking about taking the games to the next step, as soon as the game was shipped, Diogutin told me, I have a new challenge for you. Do you want to become the studio director for Nerd Monkeys? You are now ready. And then you're never ready. You're never ready for the next step, for the next project, for the next challenge. But there is that lesson of trusting yourself. And the project that I was most proud of to work as a studio director was the short games collection, because this was a project that came from our hearts, that came from our goals of bringing indies into this precious limelight of collectible, and to have to be highlighted in consoles in a way that maybe they weren't, because these are 10-minute games, maybe 45 minutes. I think this first collection you can play the entire thing in an hour, all of the 5 games that are here. So it was a very bold move, strong move that had a creative direction and a very big input. And in here, I learned how to manage everything that it means to have a studio and to be in a studio, because suddenly you're just not handling this one project. You were making sure that this project is shipped while dealing with your client work, and with dealing of keeping your team employed and looking for the next project and pitching new games and pitching them, not only the internal games that you want to do as a studio, but also the games that you need to do for companies. And that was like a big step there, and a lot to do and a lot to learn, until I came to my final lesson in that studio. There was, it is okay to move on. um, I grew up so fast uh, from that path of studio of learning how to be a production assistant, to production, the studio director, and now always looking for a little bit more. So it is okay to move on, to look for opportunities to grow, and to keep learning in new environments with new people and new projects. You need to figure it out again what this is for you. It is okay that you're not someone that wants to move from where you are, that don't want to move your countries, for example. But make sure that at least you try different projects, or maybe a different team within the studio that you are in. It is okay to let go, especially, for example, when you're indie, when you're starting your first studio, when you're fresh out of college. And you're kind of attached to that first project that you started, and to that first project that you have within you. It is okay to let go of that and to move on to the next thing, and the next thing hopefully is always going to be a better thing. And for me, that was coming to Telescope Game Studios. Telescope was a dream opportunity. I remember I was just scrolling through Work with Indies, which is a great website for all of you guys just to keep track of. There's a lot of remote work possibilities. Studios tend to be vetted by the process of submitting to the website. And then I saw that Telescope was looking for a producer that with studio director experience or capabilities, that loved animation, and that was willing to be relocated to Berlin. And I'm like, well, I never lived anywhere else except Portugal. How hard can it be? This was an opportunity to build a new studio from scratch and to work on the Last Will Singer IP. So the challenge here was a little bit different from elsewhere, but the lessons was still the same. Was still stop seeing myself as this a one thing. Again, not just the artist, but now not just the producer. Now or the studio director that jumped in to another studio that already had patterns, that already have structures, that already had a culture in place. Now this is a new challenge. It is a challenge around building something new in a known place. And so I said, like, how hard could it be? And I moved to Berlin, Germany. Um, and I remember my bosses, Reza Mimaris, told me, Mafalda, I just hope I hope you know that there's nothing but a name and a bank account for the studio. And so and there but there was a project, there was this idea for this game that was already being developed as an animation feature film. And so there was this pressure or goals that our team would do a project that would match the same energy, maybe even the same audiences, um, that the Last Will Singer film would do. So when I started this project, that was the first challenge. How can we adapt the how can we even think about the game that we're going to do while we don't have the team? So that was the first thing that I was tasked to do, build a team. This is a team that we have. We're just this four people. You can see our game designer, Nikola Kudaszewski, uh, myself, producer here in the middle, Ian Burnett, our programmer, and Emmanuel Elia, our game artist. And what I was looking at this point was to make sure that we're building a sustainable indie team. So a team that wasn't afraid to grow in their roles, that had leadership capabilities in them, that could and wanted to be a part of multiple steps of the game development and the game project, and that had communication at heart, because we were not just building this one game, The Last Will Singer. We were building Telescope Game Studios, right? So that is the time where there's like new challenges. There's like, okay, now there's something new. It's not just about building this one project. It's about building something a little bit bigger. It's about building people up. It's about building a brand and a studio brand, but it's also about making sure that those people in the end make a good game and something that they're proud of. And so that's how like my path brought me into another, even like a new layer of perspective of what my own role means and what I love to do meant. So if you've been following so far, first of all, I was just thinking about myself as just like a creator of things, as this artist. Then eventually I figured out that I could even, instead of doing that for myself, or just like for this one little perspective, I could be part of a team and build like bigger things in this game environment where I could connect to others. And then that grew into leading projects, and now leading people that lead those projects. And in that leading people experience and love and passion, that brought me to the communities that I like to build. So I am an ambassador for Women in Games, and more than that, I also work with them as an ambassador coordinator. So I help support other women in games that want to be in the industry, make an impact, and support them in whatever they need. And I also built Game Dev Lisbon from the ground up, a local community. And the reason that I did that is, again, um, I loved to organize people projects. I still do that in my free time. So that is like my creative outlets, is build spaces where people can be involved and communicate with themselves, with one another, and grow, um, and share with each other. And oh, sorry, guys. And that brings me to my final lesson here, which is like, always give back. No matter where you are in your game development journey, you have something to give to someone else: time, knowledge, or to open doors for others. And open doors for others could be, right now you are here in the career event. You could connect to your friends, tell them how it went, inviting them to another session, to the spring session, for example. Now, for those of you that are still students, you have time to give, to be volunteer, to support game dev spaces, game jams, to work with indie projects, for example, without the pressure of work and money. And even if you are a junior breaking in, you always have knowledge to bring to the table. So never be afraid of speaking up, of telling your point of view in any given project, and to bring your unique fresh take to it. And I might have spoken too fast, so I'm sorry. But I want to thank you and open it up for questions. You can always reach me in my email, my socials. You can find, I think you can find materials in my website. I have the networking playbook to support, especially people that might be a little bit more introverted, into having a good excuse to learn how to talk with others. And I'm always happy to be a part of events like this. So yeah, keep talking to me in the chats.
Thank you, Mafalda. First question from Roman: was there a certain page that you followed to know about these events?
That's a great question. Everyone keeps asking me that, and I'm super happy because in the beginning there wasn't, but now there is. So if you search game developer events, sorry, I am doing it because I never know the right name, but I think if you go to game, I'll put it. Can I put it in the chat? I think I can put it in the chat.
Yes, yes.
Can I? Wait. Reply? No. Sorry, I'll put it in the big chat. Um, I'll figure it out later. Sorry. There's like this game conference guide website that is great reference, is what I use now just to keep track of things, because there's always so many things happening around. But I wanted to tell you that that's not how I started. This is now, like, especially after COVID, there was developers that were inspired and that to develop the websites like this ones. And I think whenever you know everything that exists in the universe, it is very daunting and very difficult to navigate. So I don't necessarily recommend, if you're starting out, to go look at this right away, because it can be a little bit too much. So what I did was, whenever you start to go to your local things, you connect with the first event, and then maybe you get that newsletter, and in that newsletter they're like, oh, we're partnering up with this other event, and then suddenly you know about the other one, and then you connect to that newsletter, and eventually you kind of build your network of information, also just by following speakers at different events. So if hopefully if you start, imagine that you're following me, or you're following any of the other speakers that are here, and they tend to be speakers at other events, and or even to have friends there are, and they would share about it, they would talk about it. And so nowadays, I don't, even though I do have this resource, I don't necessarily use it as a constant thing, I just use my own network. I just log into Twitter or LinkedIn, and all the events are there. And again, so I'm just saying that that supports you into and going to things that connect to you locally, or connect to your interests, or connect to your people of interest a little bit more and more easily than suddenly having access to every event that happening around the world. So that is a little tip. That's how I did it.
What if the
Mm.
city you live in has zero events, zero opportunities, and gaming is considered devil in the culture?
Another great question. So when I lived in Cuvier, it was exactly that. Well, to be fair, I had a little of an edge because at least I was in a master's for game design and development. So I was like, well, at least I'm in a place where people want to be in games, right? But there wasn't anything like there wasn't events, and that's why I started to making my own. I started to organize all of those game jams and organize the events locally so that people would come. It's a little bit of that. Like if things exist, other people that relate back to it will start to appear. Another thing that I started to do, especially with friends from like regions where there's nothing happening, and maybe they're the only ones, or maybe they're solo devs and they're maybe they have a significant other or something like that. I always say that whenever there's two developers together, it is a game dev meet. So what I mean about it is like game dev meets, they don't need to be this big, well organized events with fancy talks and all of the showcases in the world. The way that they started here in Portugal, like when there was nothing, it was just like people getting together at a coffee shop or a bar and taking a picture of it and calling it Game Dev Meet 26 or whatever long ago that was, and and just saying that it existed. And because of that visibility, because they put themselves out there, because they said we are here, um, suddenly, other people that have the same interests started to appear. And so it's about getting to know your people, like finding your people, whatever they are. um and maybe if you're not lucky enough that you're literally living in a place where there's zero people interested in gaming, um you can nowadays you can find them online, you can find it elsewhere. The game industry is an international and a global space. The opportunities are international and global. If you go see websites as work with indies, there's a bunch of remote opportunities as well. So try to reach out to those people as well, and to the ones around you, and the ones that might not be there physically, but they are definitely there in those communities. And they're not hard to find. You can search. There's probably, I don't know, through Twitter, through Reddit, through Discord, and you can find like indie game developers united, something like that, and you start to feel a little bit less alone.
What skills you would say is needed for someone to transition to being a producer?
I think for a producer, you need to understand that the mindset is like your hard skills are your soft skills, and find ways that you can communicate that in a CV, in a development that you can figure it out. What are the skills that I'm lacking, and what can I do to show that I have them? Example: as a producer, you need to be good with people, and you kind of need to read them a little bit before they know themselves. It happens to me a lot that you know someone doesn't know that they're lost, or they're wasting time, or they're blocked, and so they cannot ask for help if they don't know it. So it's kind of your job to take notice of that, and that is just like a lot of people interaction, and to understand your own structures to do it. Is it your structure that you just schedule one-on-ones every other week? Is it your strategy just to make sure that you have connect time together? But my point is, like, for those skills to be communicated, you just need to be able to pinpoint to situations. So in this situation, this is what I did. In this situation, this is what I noticed. But a lot of producer skills are things like project management, of course, like project organizing, being able to see big pictures. Um, because for me, it's so easy. When I want to say easy, it's just like it was a natural thing, right? That I am inclined to create projects and to think about them long term and all of that. Because of that, I had to learn that not everyone is like that, and that is a learned skill. To be able to just see, okay, this is the time that we have, this is the limits that we have, this is what the team can do. So no, you cannot have like an entire week just to explore this one character, because it is impossible to get our deadline. And sometimes, for example, artists will get like too minute and go deep into details, and you need to be the person that understands that big picture and can communicate that in a way that is not soul crushing. So in a way that is still inspiring, and that person is still wanted to create. So you need to be good at making people understand the goal, um, and understand those objectives, and also, to put them in place in systemic ways. And that goes to that project organizing, that and that is the easy part. You can find courses, like there's free Google courses in project management, for example, that you can take in Coursera. So I would say the hard skills, in terms of just understanding what Scrum is, what project management is, how to think about a schedule, how to think about a budget. That is things that you have access to learn and find. But the most important thing is just to understand those soft skills that come with it. That you are a good communicator, that you're good at establishing um, real goals, and you are good at also, um, just making your team trusting you in a way.
Um, the next question, I assume it's like, what are your advices how to get in the games industry with no prior experience? Maybe like how to break into it.
I have to say, like, for me, coming from fine arts and coming from wanting to be an illustrator, an animator, um, I it's just join someone else and start doing something. And what I mean about something, again, that could be different things. There's different tiers. You don't need to be at home alone doing solo projects. But join game jams, join places where you have the opportunity to build your portfolio up. um, join those events and spaces and understand for your specific role what are the feedbacks that you're getting. uh, because I think, well, it is the thing, right? You need to have experience to get experience. But I think sometimes when you're younger, we think about experience in this very um it's like it's a very hard line thing. That is like, okay, experience means that I'm hired by this one studio once. But for example, when I was hired, when I joined their monkeys, I was still not hired. I was just hired when I started production for out of line. So I guess you could say that I was kind of getting experience before. But if I really go through my story and think about it, I was building experience when I was working with La La Land and the interactive children books, because they were still apps, and I was still understanding the app store. I was still programming. I was still doing interactive design. I was still doing all the skills that I needed later on into game development. Game jams, same thing. Organizing events supported those production skills that I needed, that project management skills. those skills of communication, and believe me, making people want to do things for free is not easy. So, for example, all the volunteering that I did, and making and building teams together to do volunteering projects, that supported that. And those are little ways that you get into game industry, because you get that experience and you show yourself to the world. I think that was the biggest thing for me, because as I explained, when I went to DEF CON, the reason why I was asked for to be a part of Nerd Monkeys was because they saw me do my thing, whatever that thing was I guess just talking to people and being engaging. And they were like, oh, this person has the potential to be a producer. This person knows how to do business development, even if I didn't know yet that I could. um, so being there, existing in those game industry spaces, was one of the things that definitely worked for me, and hopefully is going to work for you too.
I see there's a question, but Hamam, could you please rephrase your question because I don't really understand what it's like, what it's about. And maybe then I have my question
I,
for Mafalda. Like, or if you understand the question, yeah, just
I
go.
think yeah, I think I can reframe this question, because I think I'm on so basically Telescope Animation exists as an animation company, and Telescope Games is like a new company that was built up specifically to make games. Um, so Telescope Animation is still creating animation, still focusing on animation. The thing is that now Telescope Games exists, and the challenge was more about connecting the two, and making a industry pipeline that has nothing to do with the other, which is animation and games, to connect with each other, and to create with the same stories and the same IPs. But we ourselves as Telescope Animation, we work very much as any other indie game studio. We The way that we create games is exactly the way, hopefully, that other studios create games. So on our side, we all come from a game industry background, and we all make games. Yeah.
What key elements and resources do you believe are essential for establishing a successful game development studio?
Oof. Oh, I hopefully he's going to be successful, guys. So keep watching. But I made a talk about it at DEF CON this year. Um, and it was about the building blocks of building a game studio. And for me, those building blocks, if I remember correctly, I've done a little bit of talks, but it is values first, then hiring the right people, getting them the right places, the right place, and boarding them to your ecosystem of values, people, and places, and then making sure that all of that mission and everything that you're building is communicating to the outside. So for me, that means that you're not just making the games that you want to make, you're making the games that your team can make with the time and resources that they have. So I think, of course, like the key resource is to have money, but I think there's another part of it that is being sustainable. So, for example, I had people asking me, so would you have a bigger team if you have more money? And um, well, eventually I would, but I wouldn't start with a big team. You still need to start together in a way that you can grow, and in the way that you build a company culture where everyone understands the goals of the studio, and that everyone feels heard, and they have their leadership in them, at least like the core team, and then you grow from that. So I think for me, sustainability and sustainable growth in the studio.
Let's take one more, and then I'll ask you to stay here to answer. Gaming industry always looking for senior level. How can new entry join?
That's a really difficult one. It's being debated in every industry circles, right? Um, I there is no good answer here. I think we are in a point where the market is di- dictating a little bit that it's just the level of quality that a game needs to come out as, no matter what it is, if it's indie game, if and AAA and all of that. You need to be at that level to be able to compete. I always use the example of, so whenever I was in 2014, when I was younger, still in college, and went into Trojan Horses Unicorn, I remember, like, again, Disney was there, portfolio reviewing, and Riot Games and Blizzard and all of that. And think, for example, for Blizzard is like, if you want to be an artist there, you need to be at the level that they're at as a company. So there is little room to just, to be learning. You are going, I had friends, same thing for Disney. I had friends that they were like top of their game. They were the best 3D artists in this Brazilian studio that they were in. But then when they went back and when they went to Disney, they were juniors there because of their pipeline and their production. They
Mafalda,
need to learn everything from the
I'm,
ground up again.
I'm sorry. I'm
Um,
sorry to
yeah.
interrupt you. We are
Oh,
running out of time,
sorry.
so I'm gonna thank you so much, and I will ask you to stay here on the backstage and take some of the
Okay.
questions. Okay? We need to continue
Yeah,
with the
of
program.
course.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.